I'm so happy. Well, anyway, so we're gonna be reviewing 20XX, huh.
It's Mega Man, it's Mega Man, it's Mega Man, it's Mega Man!
Okay, fine. So apparently it's a Mega Man inspired game. So, 20XX, this is actually a game that I've been following since it first released on Steam Early Access, because as you guys know, I love me some Mega Man. Of course, being an Early Access game, I did not put down the money for it until the first week of its official release on the 16th of August. I got it on the 21st. Now, looking at the game's aesthetics, you can tell that this is very much an indie title, which made me curious about its development, and I was shocked to find out as I'm typing this that this game was actually funded via Kickstarter. Oh, wait, wrong game. Was funded via Kickstarter, and as you can tell from the title, the game back then was called Echoes of Irdu. Whenever I hear Echoes, I always think of Metroid for some reason, despite Alter Echo existing. Now that said, beyond this point, things get a little more complicated, because after being successfully funded, the game joined the Firehose Games Accelerator program, which is basically a studio that will handle different tasks, such as art, programming, design, and more. So really, the number of people that worked on this game is up for debate, but that said, the game received $20,000 in crowdfunding money, so the size of the team couldn't be that big. Near I could tell from the Battery Staple website, at least 5 people worked on the game. Regardless, before jumping into the game, seeing as this is a Mega Man inspired game, I figure I would talk about something Mega Man related that also relates to this game. Yeah. As I mentioned like a minute ago, I love Mega Man. In fact, without even thinking about it, I can tell you that the Mega Man series is in my top 10 video game series of all time. No, top 5. Furthermore, part of the reason this review took so long to make is because after playing 20XX, I got the urge to play Mega Man X again, and so I sat and played through Mega Man X 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 7, and 8. That said though, looking at the X series, which is what this game seems to be going after the most, the X series does change from game to game only slightly, but never actually goes through any major changes to keep things interesting. And in jumps 20XX, which is basically Mega Man X with a Binding of Isaac RNG based structure. Yeah, Mega Man and the Binding of Isaac had a love child. What diabolical overlord thought of that idea? Anyway, that means that probably the goal behind this project is replayability. And what better way to implement replayability than learning from the Binding of Isaac, a game that some people have spent over 500 hours playing. What further reinforces this is the indie nature of this game, unlike Capcom who can pump out a Mega Man game every year, but doesn't, these guys can't. And so we have a Mega Man game with the Isaac structure, at least that's my theory. And with that covered, it's time to jump into the game. Now the comparisons between this and the Mega Man X series will be presented as we move through the review. So yeah. The game starts with a The game starts with a Mega Man 2-ish intro, but gets really vague after that, and story-wise, honestly, I don't really care. There are certain games where I don't really care about the story all that much. I take the funny moments as they come and ignore the rest. The Mega Man series is one such series. And the same applies to this. I mean, the animations are good enough, and watching the professors destroy the main cast when you die while dark is funny. It's even funnier when you do better the next time you play the game and your little robot friend helps you out. Which actually reinforces my theory about your deaths in Mega Man X being X actually getting destroyed, and that the game fully acknowledges it like Dark Souls, but by showing you the glowing heads as you charge, but that's about it when it comes to the story for me. Next up is the gameplay, and well, the game starts with a nice and easy tutorial level that teaches you all you need to know about the controls, but it fails to explain some things that I think are pretty important, like how the nuts work, as well as the upgrades and purchases you make throughout each run. In the game, you basically fight 8 robot Mavericks, and after beating the first one, which is picked at random, you're given a choice between 3 of the remaining 7, and that continues with the stages getting progressively harder as you fight through. Which means if you fought this boss as the first or second in one run, then let him be like the 7th or 8th boss in another run, his fight will be much more difficult with potential bottomless pits and traps. So you start with the first of the 8 bosses until you are left with 2, then 1, and then you start the final areas of the game. Now that part is self-explanatory, everything else is not. In fact, the only reason I was able to figure out anything was mostly because I played The Binding of Isaac before, and I was running into and discovering things. After a few minutes I would be like, oh, that's just like The Binding of Isaac. Now I by no means am complaining about the lack of a tutorial, since I hate games that handhold the player to death. Not to mention that The Binding of Isaac wasn't exactly helpful when getting started, but I don't know, they could have had an SNES styled manual built into the main menu. Sorta like how the HD release of Sonic Adventure 2 had the manual in it. But I can't fault the game too much for it. I mean, I figured everything out after a few runs and I'm an idiot. Moreover, the game has 3 difficulties, so if the journey gets tough you can still switch to easy, where the game is not only easier but you get 3 lives as well. It's still pretty hard though. God damn, is this game hard. They weren't kidding when they said prepare to die, but guys, come on, easy is supposed to be easy. Well, the mode is not actually called easy, but it's under normal, so what, it's less normal? Speaking of references, this game has all sorts of references to other Mega Man games, like the nuts I presume are a reference to Mega Man 8, while the time to get serious is a reference to Mega Man X4. To make things easier for you guys, well, the people who need it, since I know that there are plenty of people who can beat Mega Man X in less than 40 minutes and who will do the same to this game, this section is more for the people like, well, me. So the things that took me a while to figure out are that during your run you will collect soul chips. Those can be collected at the end of every level, and some enemies during the levels will be carrying them. The easiest way to tell which enemies are carrying soul chips is by their glow, and whenever you die you get to spend the soul chips in the hub room, and the first thing you should do is spend it on the permanent upgrades, because basically unless you're God, you're not going to be able to beat the game without unlocking all the permanent upgrades in the game, which are basically the upgrades that will be available to you at the start of every run. Starting each run will cause you to lose all your current soul chips, so be sure to spend them on the stuff in the right or the left corner of the ground floor. They basically contain upgrades that will only be applied to your next run. Oh, and if you feel like the permanent upgrades make the game too easy, you can just turn them off. In fact, if you still find the game too easy, you can not only play on the harder difficulty, but you can also enable restrictions such as removing all augmentations, make levels longer, or grant enemies extra bonuses. There is even an endless mode, though the note, as you can see, says that it's not well tested, so proceed with caution. Next up is that during the run you will find these red rooms that provide a mini challenge of sorts. Beating it will unlock an upgrade for your character that performs various functions. There are a few variations for every body part that are enough to allow people to experiment with different gameplay styles as well as approach different platforming challenges, well, differently. My favorite part about the red rooms is not only that they give you upgrades, but it's also because some challenges involve you using a boss weapon that the room provides if you don't have it for that challenge room. And while the game is challenging you, it's also basically teaching you the different ways a boss weapon can be useful while playing a stage, like how the ice weapon can freeze fire launchers and how the energy repellent can disable lasers, which honestly is the only reason I was able to beat the game. To add to that, you have 2 forms of attack upgrades, those that increase your basic attack power or your sub-weapon power. There are plenty more, just learn what you use the most and upgrade that, because that's what you need to be able to beat the game. You need to observe, learn, and adapt to what you're experiencing, because this is not an easy game. Though speaking of rooms, there are those very safe lab rooms that are as sinister as they appear. They basically contain upgrades that help the enemies. Now, I don't think I ever picked up an item here, because unlike in Bastion where activating the idols make the game more difficult, while at the same time you get bonus experience points from them, in 20XX I don't think you get any bonuses for making the game more difficult. Though correct me if I'm wrong on that, since I don't have much experience with the very safe laboratories. And that's pretty much it. I know it might not seem like much, but I did have trouble with that stuff. That done, I did not even scratch the surface of everything else this game has. I mean, my god. So yeah, as you probably have noticed by now, the game is roguelike, which is nice as it makes repeated playthroughs less tedious. Though that wasn't much of a problem in the Mega Man games, I feel this game with how it's designed does need it, since most of the obstacles and platforming challenges stay the same despite the roguelike nature of the game. They are just presented differently. It's always either those moving platforms or platforms with lasers. The ice stages have this beehive thing with ice cannons on the wall. Again, while the stages might look different, mechanically they are somewhat the same, which is actually a good thing, because this means that this is a game that you can improve at and get better at. When I started, I died at the 2nd level, but I kept getting better and better and better until I finally finally managed to beat the game on normal. And that's all thanks to the way the game is designed. I mean, sure, the platforming never gets too interesting like it does in the Mega Man games, and sometimes is annoying thanks to those teleporty annoying things, but at the same time that's not the point of this game. You need to get to the end of the level fast if you would want to get that wrapped gift that has nuts and energy tanks. This game feels like a mix between Mega Man X2's fast gameplay and Mega Man X3's open-ish level design, and I think it's a pretty cool marriage of the two. Now with the levels described, time to talk about the characters you will be navigating the stages with.
So, who are you gonna pick? Is that your clever way of saying you will play with the red one because he's basically this game's equivalent of Zero and you just played an open note, which in tablature form is written as 0?
So Ace is up first, and goddamn is he overpowered. He makes mincemeat of everyone. Just look at that health bar go down. So yeah, woof. Next up is Nina, and well, she is X with a slow dash, nothing really to add. Though about that slow dash thing, it's actually how both Ace and Nina control. The dash is not slow per se, it's just not the same as the ones in the X series, which really is my only complaint with how this game controls. I mean, I totally understand why the dash was made the way it was made here. It's more, should I say, balanced? In the X series you would get a dash that also felt like a boost, which made platforming feel really damn good. In 20XX, the dash is balanced to the point where it's a dash, but there's no boost like there is in the X games. Though I would like to note that there is a helmet upgrade that you can get in one of those upgrade rooms or buy it from the shop that's hidden in the stage, or sometimes show up just before the boss room. And the helmet upgrade makes the dash perform the way I personally think it should have been. This movement just feels so much better like this than it does without the helmet, which I suppose is the reason this helmet is, you know, an upgrade in the game. They wanted you to start with an average character and then become a badass later on, but I just wish this was how things were. The similarities between the two series continues, I think. I say I think because at one point it seemed to me that the bosses have weaknesses to other boss weapons, but I can't confirm this because Ace's Z sword is just too overpowered. Well, actually what's really overpowered is this Grim version of Ace's weapon. And once you see how overpowered this thing is and how its range extends after you use it, you know that it's silly to use anything else. Unless you want to use the sub-weapons to disable an annoying trap or obstacle, not to mention that since you are continuously upgrading your damage output while playing, be it for your basic attack or sub-weapons, it's really difficult to tell which weapon does more base damage. But regardless, the RNG nature of this game was likely put in place to leave things to the player to find what fits their playstyle best. Given the large number of drops you can find beyond informing you how the game works, which method you choose while playing is up to you. The one annoying thing regarding the RNG is that if you find a set of gear that you like, you're gonna have to exit and start a new run until you get what you want again. What makes it suck even more is when you realize that soul chips can't be saved. If you don't use them before starting a run, they're gone, and if you use them, start a run, then not get what you want, you can either continue with less than ideal gear and try your best, or you can exit and start a new run again, which in turn makes you lose the things you spent your soul chips on. And that makes me wish this game had a retry option in the menu instead of making me exit back to the title menu, load the game back up again, and then start a new run that way. The wait is not that long though, but losing the benefits of the soul chips is what sucks here. And that's this game's structure. I will get to the extras in a bit, I just want to talk about what 20XX did, which is something different. It's something that I feel the X series should have done with Mega Man X4. And I really don't understand why Capcom kept making essentially the same game over and over again. And don't get me wrong, Mega Man X4 is one of my favorite PS1 games. In fact, if I were to list 10 games that did this to my PS1, X4 would be on that list, and I even like X6 and X8. But given how X is built, which is an awful lot like Samus from Metroid from an upgrading your character standpoint, I would have really loved to see a Mega Man X Metroid style game, or in my case, a Symphony of the Night version of an X game, because the series with how it came out, it's too much like the classic series in areas it shouldn't be, and with how the series was, it could have gone on the Binding of Isaac route, which I love, or the Symphony of the Night route, which is what I would kill for. But not all hope is lost. There is another project I've been following for what seems to be my whole life at this point, which is Mega Man X Corrupted. And not only is it kind of a Metroidvania, but it also uses the same sprites from the SNES classics. But anyways, back to 20XX, that took a different approach that I just about covered. All that's left is to talk about the ending. If you don't want to see what happens in the end, skip to this part of the video. First, I would like to say that this game is not easy. The last stage, well, technically it's not, but it sure as shit felt like it was. This stage specifically is one of the most tense and exhausting stages I have ever played. It seems like it goes on forever, and it's just too much. It has really annoying platforming segments, and given the nature of this game, if you die, you have to start all the way back from the beginning. Imagine playing Mega Man X2 and playing this horrifying segment over here that you need to pass if you'd want to get the Shoryuken. But you die. Now in Mega Man X2, you get to try again. Now imagine that exact same scenario, but one where you have to start from the beginning of the game, and that is exactly what we have with 20XX. That would not be a problem if every run to get to this point wasn't like 30 to 40 minutes long, but that said, I can't be too mad at it because this is what this game was intended to be. I mean, I played this game for 12 hours, and you wanna know what? The time flew. I mean, by the time I put my controller down, Steam told me I played for 12 hours. 12 hours? Well, now granted, 4 of those 12 hours were with my friend, and we were basically taking turns and making fun of each other as we lost. But still, 12 hours? That felt like 5 minutes. As to what happens in the end, well, you fight the two people that made you in a rather easy boss fight, which thank freaking god they weren't anything challenging. After what I had to go through to get to this point, I honestly just wanted to finish the game. Though bonus points to the final boss for also being fun by incorporating some platforming into his fight. After you destroy him, a Metroid-esque escape sequence happens, and that's it. What happens next? I have no clue. Alright, that covered. Next up is the extras. This game has the usual daily challenges among other challenges that I'm beginning to see more and more of in these type of games. It also has online play that, according to this warning, isn't fully implemented, which is why I didn't really mess with it. I just focused on the main game and I had a ton of fun with it. And lastly, we have the music, which unfortunately is just okay. None of the tracks I find bad, but compared to the X series that frankly had some of the best music in any video game, the 20XX soundtrack is simply average. This game is one of the most irritatingly based on RNG fun games I have ever played, and for only $15 you're getting more than your money's worth. I mean, I had more fun with this game than I did most AAA $60 games, so I will definitely be coming back for more. Anyway, so with that being said, for those of you who are watching wherever you may be in this world, thank you guys for watching and stay alive until the next video.